This episode is sponsored by Where to Shop and Dine. Download the app on Google Play Store or Apple App Store today. Connecting colleges and communities. Hi, you're watching Scene TV, and I'm Maya McNulty, your host, Schenectady Cable Entertainment News and Events. Welcome to the studio. What a special show we have today, the Special Olympics New York, and I'd like to welcome my good friend, Neal Johnson. Welcome, the CEO of Special Olympics New York, and Sarah Martinez, the Senior Director of the Special Development at the Special Olympics New York. So thank you both for coming and being on the show and sharing with us your passion and the Special Olympics. So Neal, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you became involved with the Special Olympics.
Special Olympics, Maya, has actually going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2018. And it was program started by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the sister of President John F. Kennedy, because of their family's involvement with their sister who had an intellectual disability. And Mrs. Shriver knew that people with intellectual disabilities, or ID as we refer to it, were really much more capable and competent of things that many of the professionals of that day really didn't give them credit for. And she decided to challenge those premises about what people with ID could and could not do. And she was also a very avid sports person. So she would host people from institutions in the summertime on their farm in Maryland, where they would compete in games and recreational activities, and she became convinced that they were much more competent and thought that the value of sports and sports training and competition would be a great asset in help developing them and their potential. So in 1968, the first Special Olympic Games were held on Soldier Field in Chicago, and there were approximately 1,000 athletes from 3 countries. That program has morphed into the largest program in the world, sports for people with intellectual disabilities, nearly 5.5 million athletes across the globe, in many countries which they never recognized the incidence of intellectual disabilities prior to being involved in Special Olympics. And we all know that through much statistical research that every population has people who have these intellectual challenges.
Sure.
They didn't recognize it in some of these countries. At the last World Summer Special Games in 2015, there were 180 countries represented. So Special Olympics is a sports organization that is designed to develop the potential of people with intellectual disabilities through the vehicle of sports. It's morphed into something much more significant. We're now one of the leading advocates for inclusion and acceptance for people with intellectual disabilities through some of our non-traditional programs, such as Unified Sports, where we take athletes with and without intellectual disabilities, peers, in schools or in the communities, bring them together to train and compete on the same team. It is a difference maker. Additionally, through our Healthy Athletes program, a lot of people don't realize that around the world, people with ID are usually the most disadvantaged when it comes to appropriate medical care and treatment. So what we're doing is bridging that gap by running healthy athlete programs where we will bring medical professionals in multiple disciplines to come assess and treat athletes who are in our programs at our programs, giving them better access to the care that they deserve. So it's not just a sports organization anymore. We like to think that we're making a real difference in the world. And it's not just for our athletes or their families, it's for all of us in the general population as well.
Yeah. Speak on how many years that you have been involved. You haven't been involved for 50 years.
Well, given my youthful appearance, I started in the program 43 years ago. And I spent my first 23 years as a volunteer. First in the Bronx, where I came from and grew up and where I worked. As a high school, I was a adapted physical education teacher in the New York City schools, a high school official and a high school coach. And I was asked by a colleague of mine in the schools to help him do this thing for retarded kids at Fordham University 43 years ago. And I was so motivated by the the reception I received, the feeling I got out of that singular experience, and the effort and gratitude that those young people I worked with that first time demonstrated for what we do, that I started to think about, I'm coaching Division I prospect high school athletes, and they won't do as much work as these guys will do and work as hard. So I became more involved coaching, officiating. I began to expand my responsibility across the state and internationally through mostly the sports angle of it. But and then 20 years ago, I was on the board of Special Olympics in New York, and my predecessor left to take another opportunity, and putting together a search committee for the replacement. And at the first meeting of the search committee, they all turned around and said, "Why don't you do it?" And of course, I looked past all of them and said, "Who are you talking to?" And went back to my wife, and she said, "Why don't you? You love it. You've been involved. You know every aspect of it. Why don't you do it?" So that's how I've come to here today.
Yeah, and what a brilliant job you do as the CEO of Special Olympics New York.
You're too kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. Not to go unnoted. Speak on the different chapters or the different states of how Special Olympics New York is different.
Special Olympics is a global movement, as I said, and it's headquartered in Washington, D.C. The global organization is Special Olympics International. Special Olympics International accredits programs, sub-programs, which New York is one, usually by nation. They're national programs, such as a Special Olympics Belarus, Special Olympics Brazil, Special Olympics Canada, Special Olympics Mexico. There are some others that aren't necessarily national programs. Each of the states here in the United States is its own fully incorporated and accredited organization by Special Olympics International. So there's a Special Olympics New Jersey, Special Olympics Texas, and we each have our own responsibilities within our own jurisdiction and where we're incorporated. But again, there are more than 180 nations now, so there's probably over 200 programs of Special Olympics around the globe. Here in New York, we're organized regionally. As a larger state, we have to have more things going on. So there are 9 regions here in the state of New York. For example, the Capital District region is a region, Long Island, New York City, Southern Tier, Western region, North Country. They're all various parts of what we do in our organizational structure to deliver program services and, of course, bring in the assets and resources that help us fund the programs, because after all, we are a nonprofit.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. Sarah Martinez, you're the Director of Development at the Special Olympics. What's your role?
My role is that I bring in funds for the athletes, because all of our athletes train and compete free of charge. And so it's essential. Like Neal was saying, that fundraising is a big component. And I also work with other fundraisers in the area in Central Region, Southern Tier, Capital District, North Country. And so it's really very exciting to be part of that and part of a team. This is one thing I can say about Special Olympics. I love being part of the Special Olympics team. It's very much about camaraderie, bringing the best out of people, and it's really fantastic to see how things come together when the athletes are involved.
Great. How many years have you been involved with the Special Olympics?
It's been about 2.5 years.
Yeah, and so you're really passionate and you're really motivated
Absolutely.
and driven.
Yes.
Is there a favorite athlete that sticks out in your mind?
You know, I do get text messages from Chad Hildreth every day, and sometimes he calls me his best friend, and there's those times when I'm having a bad day, I'm feeling a little down on my luck, and I get that text from Chad, and he just brightens my day. You know, a lot of people think, well, I'd like to help the athletes of Special Olympics, but one thing you might not know is that they have an awful lot to give themselves, and you learn a lot by being a part of their lives.
Yeah, they're amazing people. I've had the opportunity to meet a few of them, and we have an event that's coming up, so I want to talk about that a little later. So it's been really cool. It's been a great experience. Myself, very fulfilling. Neal, I want for you to speak on volunteers and how this organization, because we're stemming off of that, how does Special Olympics work with its volunteers?
Volunteers are critical to the success of Special Olympics. Special Olympics, no matter where it is, success is predicated on volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
We're the largest program in North America. We serve 69,000 children and adults all across the state. We do it with 50 employees, and we produce over 5,000 competitions, and we generate approximately $8 million annually. So 50 people can't do all that.
Of course.
Our success is predicated on an extensive network of 35+ thousand volunteers who are committed to our athletes or give us some type of access to what they can bring to the table to help us deliver our mission. And that's really critical when we come to our events, our competitive events.
Yeah, so I've read and I recently have saw that the Special Olympics is coming to Siena College and they've won the bid for the next 2 years, 2017 and 2018. Sarah, do you want to speak on that a little?
Sure. I'm very excited because Capital District is my hometown, my home base. Actually, my family comes back 6 generations, so the fact that we have state games right here in our own backyard is extremely exciting. It's been over a decade since state summer games has been in this area, and this is our highest level of competition in the New York State chapter. So we're going to have athletes from all over the state that are going to come and visit us, and our athletes right here in our region are going to be part of it. And it's really going to be quite phenomenal. This is our highest level of competition, and you want to be there to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mean to cut you off, but speaking of the athletes in the highest form of competition, can anyone just show up and be compete that day?
No, you can't. Special Olympics is serious competition, just like any other sports. You have to, you have to be eligible to submit your designation into Special Olympics. You have to compete in a regional competition first, and in order to compete in a regional competition, you have to compete in a local competition. So there is very much of a tier level when it comes to competing in state level games.
Okay. And volunteers, can anyone just show up to volunteer, or do they have to pre-register?
Volunteers, it's very specific. We have roles for everything. So the best way to volunteer for Special Olympics is to go straight to our website. Right on the front page, there's a module that says volunteer. You fill out an application, and there's a team that will provide the best possible spot for you.
Okay, great. And how long in advance should someone start filling out that application to become a volunteer? Because do they fill up, and is there such thing as too many volunteers?
No, there's never too many volunteers. We have even a volunteer position called being a fan in the stand, where you're there to cheer on the athletes. Hooray! And you clap and you cheer on the athletes. So there's something to do for everyone.
Okay, and what's the age that a volunteer can be in order to either be a fan in the stands or to maybe help at track and field?
There's no limit in age. If you're a minor, you want to be accompanied by an adult, but there's no limit. Special Olympics is for all people.
Okay. And tell us the date that this is happening over at Siena College.
Well, it starts on June 16th, and so the major portion of the competitions are going to be on the 17th, and then it concludes Sunday on the 16th, 17th, and 18th. So 18th is the last day.
Okay.
Yes.
And Neal, speak on what is expected at this big event, like opening ceremonies and some of the food and the people coming. You've experienced this 43 times, so tell us about it.
Well, it's multiples actually, because we have 3 sports seasons. So we have these culminating events at the state level 3 times a year. Like we just concluded our state winter games in Poughkeepsie in February. Now the summer games in Siena in June, and it might be interesting for people to understand how we come to award our games to a community. It is a competitive bid process. Special Olympics New York likes to move it around the state so that many different communities can have a chance to experience our athletes and what we do, and they can take some civic pride in having helped produce, one of our events. Siena, first of all, has to be able to pull together the competition facilities, first-rate competition facilities. And we're not just going to be competing on Siena, but we're also going to be competing it around the capital region, Hudson Valley Community College, for example, and several other facilities. So it's going to be a community event staffed by community people. Volunteers, we're probably going to need over 1,000 volunteers to make this weekend a success.
Is that per day, or is that?
That's a collection of total volunteers. And there'll be individuals who will come and volunteer, church groups, school groups, civic organizations, and even corporations will want to bring teams of volunteers together to have some supplemental value for their employees to become involved as a team. And to register, www.specialolympicsnewyork.org. There's a volunteer registration site is up now, so you can go on now, register, and then our process will start to register you and then reach out to you to make sure you're engaged, hopefully where you want to be, but certainly to be involved with our athletes is the absolute most that we want you to be involved with.
Yeah. Speak on what is your favorite sport during the Special Olympics Summer Games?
Well, in
You're
the
gonna
summer,
upset some athletes if you pick one.
yeah, I'm in trouble. You're gonna get me caught up here. I tell you what, certainly the most animated to watch, because all our athletes are intense. But the most animated to watch is powerlifting, which will be a summer sport.
Mm-hmm.
And our athletes are serious about it, and no matter what, whether you deadlift 555 pounds, like we have a gentleman from Sullivan County who does that, or you deadlift 116 pounds, depending on your body weight.
Mm-hmm.
Watching them and seeing their enthusiasm and the way they get themselves psyched for an attempt, and the disappointment if they don't clear it, or the joy when they do, it really is, it's impressive. And they can get really animated. They'll steal your hearts. But every one of our competitions is like that. That's just because of the sport itself. It lends itself to be
It's usually on a theater stage,
Yeah.
with theater seating,
Uh-huh.
so very theatrical.
I like to tell people, people think that Special Olympics arts, it's so nice and stuff like that, and I'm like, we're not nice. We're essential. We're important.
Yeah, there's serious competition, and also the universities where these competitions will be taking place. Speak on those, because it's broken up throughout the capital region, correct?
Yes. Well, they'll be again. Siena will be where all of our delegations will be housed, and the meals will be there. We will have healthy athlete components at both Hudson Valley and at Siena. But then our bowling will be off-site, and the venue escapes me now. Gymnastics will be off-site, and then Hudson Valley and
Sage colleges, I think, are doing it.
Sage will host one of our competitions.
And New Albany?
You already will. So it's a community event, and we're open not just to people who are involved with Siena to be involved. We're hoping the general community will want to be involved and step up and help us out. As I always like to say, it's free, it's fun, and you'll be glad you did.
Yeah, it's exciting. I want to talk about the training level of these athletes and how passionate and committed and inspired they are. So, can you speak on that?
Certainly. Our first of all, it starts with our coaches. Each of our coaches have to be Special Olympics certified. So we put them through sport-specific clinics. Plus, we educate them as to aspects of what people with ID they can experience if they don't have a prior experience with people with intellectual disabilities. And then we train them and talk to them about protective behaviors, concussion training. They're all requirements that we have of our coaches. After the coach becomes certified, then they're going to work with a team or an individual group of athletes, depending on what sports they're going to coach in. And they must train for at least 8 weeks before they're allowed to compete. And then, as Sarah had mentioned prior, they'll compete locally, then they'll compete regionally, then some may compete on a super regional level, and then some will go to the state games, and even some will go to, in outlying years, either USA National Special Olympic Games or Special Olympics World Summer and Winter Games, which the Winter Games just concluded this past winter in Austria. And the next Summer Games will be in 2019 in Abu Dhabi. So it's an experience. If you qualify for the USA, for the World or National Games, it's something that very often people with ID will not ever have that life-changing experience again. So it's just another way where some of our athletes, we like to think we're making a difference in their lives. one of the things I always tell people about our athletes, that they're serious about their competition. They will run through you to win. But the difference between our athletes and others is they will go back and pick you up. So
that's really sweet.
it's all about the competition, and then when it's over, it's about the friendship, the being involved with others and making new friends and learning from other people.
There is an inclusion. The camaraderie is really inspiring and uplifting.
Yep.
So that will lead me to my next question: is why is the Special Olympics so special?
I think it's the only program that I'm aware of that uses the vehicle of sport. Now, there are other sports organizations for people who are differently abled, as I like to use the term. But we're a serious sports organization.
Mm-hmm.
But we also realize that as the times change, we need to become more of an advocacy organization. So we like to think that while we stay true to sports as our vehicle to make the difference in the world, we like to think that we're now becoming more critical in the general sense of value-added proposition for people with intellectual disabilities. And we also have people who have physical limitations involved. So we're different from the Paralympics, which are people who have physical challenges. All of our athletes must have cognitive delays or disabilities or intellectual disabilities, people with autism, on the autism spectrum, for example. And again, many of them also have physical challenges. So we include all of them. We include all of them, and now we're including through Unified Sports, we're bringing people without limits and putting them together with our athletes, and it is a world changer.
Yeah, I can see it already. Is this done 100% for free? Are these athletes able to compete? And how can someone donate to the Special Olympics New York?
As Sarah mentioned, we never charge our athletes, their families, or caregivers for any of the programs that we provide for them. So our costs are incredible. Insurance, I don't know any community-based sports organization that doesn't have a fee charged. Some will provide scholarships to allow those that might not, but all of our things are underwritten by Special Olympics New York. And we do get some state funding, but we're not a state organization, so we have to raise almost $8 million a year to make sure we can cover those costs. Corporations, Sarah will knock on corporation doors. We will talk to individual donors. We will use every other, legal and ethical opportunity to raise funds to support our athletes and our mission.
So I would probably, it would behoove me not to say specialolympicsnewyork.org/donate, right? So
It would behoove us. You can.
So go to the site and donate. But Sarah, you have an exciting event coming up called Runway for the Gold, which is totally a fundraiser for the Special Olympic athletes and their parents to empower them, build confidence. They're going to be able to strut their stuff on the catwalk with
so exciting.
With some local celebrities or community leaders, as we like to call them. So speak on that and speak on the date and what's happening.
I'm so excited to do this fashion show and all the things that Neal has been talking about inclusion, about bringing people together with and without intellectual disabilities, celebrating our differences. And this is a great way for the community to come together and spread awareness and raise necessary funds for our state summer games. We have, I would say, 30 models lined up, and we're pairing them, people with intellectual disabilities, people with intellectual disabilities, and these are people that are leaders in our community on both sides, really. And I think that they'll be able to learn from each other and have a great time and come together and dress in their best. And we've got a lot of different vendors, stylists that are getting involved, and we have wonderful food. It's going to be at the Edison Club in Rexford, and we're going to have, it's just going to be great. A lot of things that are going to be flashing and people that are going to be smiling and having a good time. It's going to be emceed by a great local comedian here. And so we're going to have a national anthem that's going to be sung. So a lot of the things that we see in opening ceremonies where we celebrate and we have these, it's a very formal celebration. We're going to see some of those things mirrored in our fashion show. So it's something I don't think the community will want to miss.
Oh, that's exciting. And what's the date and the location
It's
again?
May 18th. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. It's on a Thursday night. It's at the Edison Club, which is in Rexford, so it's very central in the Capital District region. And the best way to get tickets would be to call me. I can give you my number, and my telephone number is 518-388-0790. And my name is Sarah Martinez. Carol will probably pick up the phone, and she'll send you over to me.
Yeah, they have a really small office here on Balltown Road. So, but again, the fashion show is Runway for the Gold, and it is going to be held at the Edison Club on May 18th from 6 to 9. And we will put the link up so that you can purchase tickets there. And tickets will be available at the door as well, general
Yes.
admission tickets. It's a fundraiser, and so 100% of the donations are going towards the Special Olympics. I've learned that the Autism Society is going to be making flowers from Feldhausen Florists, partnered with them to do the flowers for
Yes,
the
that's very
event,
true.
and they'll be able to sell those to make profits for the Special Olympics so the kids can compete for free and their families. What an exciting time. It was such a pleasure to get to know you both, even better here on Scene TV, and thank you for sharing Runway for the Gold, and also the Special Olympics New York with us. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
being
much
on
for
Scene
having
Thanks for
us.
having
TV.
us, man. Greatly
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.